Hello, 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 cheeky
Hey,
natives.
what to do, what to do, what to do?
So I'm always so excited when we record podcasts because I feel like it's just an intimate conversation. But I'm so glad that you will get to hear our thoughts and hear our laughter, just our conversations. And firstly, thank you so much for continuing to support us and for continuing to listen to us. We really appreciate it. How you doing, Alma? How you do? How you do?
I'm okay. I'm really excited to have read such a beautiful book. And I was actually complaining earlier this day that, I've just read my first bad book of the year. And I know that it seems extra bad because I read this book straight after reading Buki's book. So I'm just gonna leave it in the air and say that this legit is one of my favorite books this year.
So today we have the wonderful privilege of being in conversation with the author of An Ordinary Wonder. And I will let Alma just read the bio, and then we will get straight into the conversation to welcome Buki.
Okay, I am so excited. I have the supreme pleasure of introducing Buki Papillion, who is Nigerian born and who studied law at Hull University in the UK and then obtained her MFA in creative writing from Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She has received numerous writing scholarships and awards and is a VONA alumnus. She has been at various times an events organizer, travel advisor, librarian, and chef, and her work has appeared in numerous publications. She currently lives in Boston, USA, and she is the author of An Ordinary Wonder.
I want to start by saying, and I've said this before, there is nothing ordinary about this wonder. Welcome, Buki, to the Cheeky Natives.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you, and I'm so glad that you love An Ordinary Wonder.
I think love is an understatement. I think we really, really are astounded by just how much the book achieves and how tender and extremely moving it is. At least for me, I think it was a book that I started and I thought, oh my gosh, it's 300 pages. Am I going to be able to finish this in the time that it requires me to finish it? But I literally spent half a day reading the last 200 pages of this book because it was that juicy. And I just wanted to know what happens next, what happens next, what happens next.
Yep.
To begin the question or the conversation, Buki, I think the first question is, this is such an important story to tell, particularly in contemporary literature. And we wanted to find out from you, why was it important to tell the story? Or perhaps, where did the story meet you?
I love that question, where did the story meet me? The story met me at a point in my life when I was asking all sorts of interesting questions about life, about myself, because I am a transplanted Nigerian living in the United States who used to live in the UK. So I was finishing my MFA at the time, and I was studying my own culture. I was doing a course studying my own culture, Nigerian culture, which was for me different from actually living it, which I had lived my Nigerian culture for 20 something odd years of my life, because I didn't leave Nigeria till I was in my early 20s. And so this sort of retrospective looking back and actually diving into my own culture brought up so many things about my own life, about my past, about my country, about the way we think about certain concepts, for example, like gender. And so while doing all of that, I heard this clear voice telling me this story, this astounding story. And I was like, oh, wait, I need to pay attention to this. This is so vital. And then it became a sort of an unlayering, if you like, of all of the different aspects of my life and of being Yoruba and of my gender and the way that we perceive gender variance in my country and in Nigeria and in many other countries. And so all of these came together to to intersect at a point where also having been not so long ago transplanted to the United States from the UK, I had so many questions about life, about who a person really is, and how do you become who you are in the face of everything else that tells you who you are supposed to be. And it was about the sort of challenges that arise when you are looking for a place where you can belong. So that was where this book met me.
Oh, I love that.
I love this answer, Buki. I think we've just started the podcast on such a great note, because I want to talk about the exploration that you do in this book, right? And the exploration of becoming and belonging are intricately linked. And the character in this book Otolorin leaves home in order to become. So she's displaced in order to become. And so there's a relationship that I want us to talk about between the becoming and the displacements, the becoming, the belonging, and the displacement, and why geography features in the way that it does.
Right. So, yes, that is so interesting. You put it so succinctly. It's really amazing how you put your finger directly on exactly what it is about. That the whole idea of having to leave one place, the place where, ideally we would all be born exactly where we belong, right? We would all be born exactly in the places that suit us most. Someone who really loves the cold would find themselves born in some Scandinavian country, or someone who really loves the heat would be born somewhere in the Sahara, and so on and so forth. And someone who, for example, I come from a culture where we're very gregarious. Nigerians can talk the whole day long. They will gather. There is nothing as important as everyone gathering in one place and talking and telling stories. And so it's called having oyaya. This is really important, to have that thing called oyaya, which is exuberance and extroversion. Now, bringing this back sort of to myself, I am a complete and utter introvert. So being born into a culture where you had to be so extroverted, for me, it was so hard in so many ways. And I had to figure out, okay, I need to find a place where I can be more the self that is real to me. And so there is this whole, so that is on a very lower level than, say, trying to find a place where you can belong because you are so persecuted for being born the way you are, as Otolori is. And so it's that exploration. So I think that sort of springs in a way from my own understanding of what it is in so many ways. And that is there's so much more layers to that and to my own personal story. But it's that sort of exploration of having to leave everything that is familiar to you. There is a point in the book where Otto has to leave home, and this comes fairly early on, where Lori concludes that, okay, the only way that I can sort of find my way towards becoming Lori is for me to leave this home. And yet it isn't easy, because home is where, your loved ones are, your familiar ones are. Even if those familiar ones are the ones treating you wrong, they are still the people you are most familiar with. They are still the people you've grown up with. Right to the point where it's Otto's mother. There is nothing as much that says home like mother. So it is this whole thing of having to be displaced, whether it is from your home or from the side of your loved ones or from the country where you were born into and whose cultures in many ways you are attuned to, but in also other ways knowing that you will thrive possibly better elsewhere, because that is where you can best be your full self. So all of those are the themes that I do explore in An Ordinary Wonder.
I like the the question around displacement, right, and becoming, and I think in many ways unbecoming. But I wanted to speak a little bit about like Otto's initial displacement, which is leaving home in order to go to a boarding school. And just like some of the uncomfortability that comes with that, right? So it isn't a decision of, hey, I'm leaving because I'm going to do better for myself, right? But it's leaving because I know that I'm causing some form of chaos in this home. And I'm leaving in order for there to be normalcy in the home. And I wondered about that exploration of like, I think for me, the coming of age story and just the hardship that Otto goes through, it's hard for me because I'm like, you're young and you have to go through all of this and you need to make grown-up decisions about like the only way that good can be sustained in this home, no matter what good may look like, I need to leave. And I wanted to speak about that, just the displacement that Otto feels in the family setting itself and leaving as a way of further displacing themselves away from the family.
That is so... that goes really deep. Yes. So that came to me writing the story. I mean, it was pretty much straight away that I understood that Otto, being so young, already understood that in so many ways that took on that guilt again. So this is also a question of guilt. And the guilt that little children can sometimes take on because they interpret things differently. Sometimes adults think children don't hear what is going on around them, but they know so much more than the adults realize they know. The problem, though, is that children then go ahead and put their own interpretations on what they hear. And the interpretations that they put on what they hear is not always, it could lead to some really difficult consequences. I'm thinking here about, I can't remember the title of this very, very popular novel, which was made into a movie where this young girl overhears something and then she thinks that it meant something else, and it ends up in a young man being sent to jail. Whereas, so there is that whole thing of being young, and then having to deal with things that are so grown up that your interpretation can be a little bit different than what is intended. Except in this case, in Otto Loring's case, it is very much what is going on. It is very much what is going on that that Otto's presence in the home is literally it's as soon as Otto was born, chaos came into the family, and chaos came into the family because this child was born intersex, and because at that time in Nigeria, it was not understood. This was a complete anomaly. This was a complete shock to the parents. This led to their father abandoning them. This led to, so right from the very beginning, that resentment towards Otto was there from the parents, and then from the sister just loving her, from Wura just loving her twin sister, but at the same time having to fight that whole idea that, oh, if my brother, because that is her brother to her at that time, to everyone, because it's been raised, because she's been raised, Otto is being raised as a boy. If only my brother would just be like normal boys, we would have a great family and I'd be happy. So there is that whole thing of these two young children having to deal with grown-up issues, and also that displacement of Otto then coming to the understanding that, okay, since I was born, I've been a source of chaos in the lives of my parents, in the life of my beloved sister. So if I remove myself, then they can be happy. And maybe somehow in the process of removing myself, I can also find happiness becoming who I really want to be.
And I think that there's an important tension in the family that you explore. And for me, it made me think about what it means, or where is the line, right? In raising your children and also allowing them to be the version of themselves that you may not necessarily have had in mind or been comfortable with. And I think so much of that is a tension that you explore in the book, because these parents obviously wanted a boy, right? and also Lauren doesn't turn out to be the boy that they wanted. And so there is a tension between parents and their desires and potentially their projections over this child, but also the tension between allowing your child the fullest freedom to be themselves, even though it may be in direct opposition to what you want. And so I think that you explored that tension quite clearly in the book. And I wanted us to talk a little bit about some of your reflections around the tension in parenting, right? And what it means to raise your children outside of yourself and what you may have hoped for them.
Wow, another deep and wide question. I love your questions. So yes, so that is an age-old thing, though, isn't it? This idea of parents having children and expecting them to be, some projections of themselves. And of course, the best thing that a parent can do for their child is to say, well, here you are, you this new interesting being that didn't exist before, that nothing like you has ever existed before in the entire history of, ever since. And here you are, and what have you brought to the world? And how can I help you to shine and to use everything you've brought to the world to become your best self? That's what parents should be asking, right? That's what their mindset should be when a child is born. But usually, the mindset is, we have a family farm. My grandfather was a farmer. My great-grandfather was a farmer. This farm has been in our family for generations. We know everything about farming yams. And here is my son. Well, we're going to pass the farm on to you. But, this son wants to be an artist instead. And there we go. Away we go with the tension, with the disappointments, with all of that. So there is always that tension in any family. I mean, and also there is this whole thing of personality as well. I remember this person that I used to know, distant family friends, where this lady absolutely hated her mother-in-law so much. She could not stand her. They could not stand each other. She loved her daughter immensely, but the daughter looked the spitting image of her mother-in-law and actually had the very personality of her mother-in-law, and they will clash so much. And these are the sort of things that we cannot control for. We cannot go and have our children, ordered from, some central child ordering service and say, this child has to be this tall, this child has to be this gender, this child has to behave in this way, not look like that person or act like this person. So there's all of that tension of Otto being born into this whole web of expectations. Cultural expectations, family expectations, sibling expectations, and then finding that, and then everyone trying to sort of now say, okay, we're in this situation, but we need to mold you into what we expected, as opposed to embracing Otto exactly as she has arrived. And so many modern families struggle with that, especially in terms of, specifically gender presentation, gender variance, whether it is trans or a boy being more firm, a girl being more male in her appearance, in her presentation, or masculine inclined, I should say. So there are all of these, and then what that says about us as human beings, as that these things should actually make such a difference to our ability to accept and embrace and love our children, just because they did not come out or they are not presenting in ways that we feel they should be in society. And then also how much of that comes from the parents themselves as individuals. For example, if all of those restrictions were removed from society and culture, if it was absolutely normal to present and be however you are, would the parents then not have an issue personally So these are all the questions that I explore.
Buki is so rich with wisdom, right? And just like how thoughtful you've written the book.
Yeah,
I wanted to speak a little bit about the secrets, right? I think that secrets also are such a central theme in the book, right? From Oto secretly being Lori, but also from the secrets that Oto's grandmother hid, right? And how secrets sort of also permeate the lives of these people. And Oto, also thinking about Oto secret, has been an intersex person and how this permeates her life throughout the book. And I wanted to speak about the role of secrets, particularly what driving force it played in the story.
Yes. So secrets, I mean, we all have them. Everyone has some skeleton, as we say, in our cupboard. Everyone has that thing that would drive a person to that if it was exposed would create difficult situations. And secrets exist mostly because of shame in some ways. And family secrets are almost always around events and incidents that are considered shameful. So in Oto's case, what has happened, of course, is that she's born intersex. One of the things that human beings have shame around the most is sex, sexuality. Anything to do with sex, sexuality, gender, there is a big possibility for shame to happen. And so from time immemorial, having a child that is born intersex in many societies has been a quote unquote shameful event. So for Oto and in 1990s Nigeria, it is an event where they don't even know where to turn. They do not, the parents do not know where to turn. The parents have no idea about what this is. And so their response is to hide. They feel that their best response is to hide. And so they inculcate that into Oto Lori that, you are this anomaly. If people heard about you or knew about you, it will be so shameful and it will be so horrible for you, and it'll be so shameful and it'll be so horrible for all of us. And so going back to that and then taking that shame further, there are all the secrets that all of the family are hiding. And all of those secrets are around this particular central event that they feel that is so shameful. And so, for example, I read an article not too long ago where this was in very recent times, where some African midwives, I'm trying to remember exactly which country now, and I do not want to say the wrong country. I think it might have been Kenya, and if it is not, please forgive me. I just cannot remember the exact country, where they were interviewing real midwives, and these midwives were confessing that when children were born intersex, the parents would actually ask them to quietly kill these children.
I want to just and this is it may have been Kenya, but this is also happening in South Africa. There has been a number of research of midwives, saying that intersex infanticide is a thing, right? So I think it's quite widespread, even though we don't talk about it, especially on the continent.
Yes, exactly. And so it is. I mean, this is the heaviness of the size of the secret of how this is regarded, and this is partly also why I felt like this book just needed to be written, and written very, very much from an African gaze, from an African perspective, from a Nigerian African perspective, because I didn't want it to be because these sorts of subjects around intersex, around gender, around queerness are usually talked about in terms of, this is a Western thing, this is a this is a European thing, this is an American thing, this has nothing to do with us here. We don't, that is not even in the conversation here. But I very much wanted us to have that conversation in a way that wasn't being had from that Western gaze, that wasn't being had from, so I wanted this to be brought to light and to stop being such a thing that it's such a secret thing. I wanted it to be something that was brought to light, that is discussed openly. I wanted people to read about Oto's story and say, oh my God, this could be my neighbor, this could be my neighbor's daughter, this could be my child. How would I react? Would I react like Oto's mother? Could I be better? And why should this be such a big deal anyway? If my child is born intersex, so that is so just chipping away at that shame, that whole aspect of secrecy and shame.
Oh, I love that we are speaking about secrets and shame, right? Because I think that the book really just demonstrates the pervasive power of shame and of secrets. And I wanted to speak a little bit about I found this to be such an interesting part of the book, to speak a little bit about bad mothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not just bad mothers. I wanted us to speak about bad people as an idea, right? Because all of the characters in this book are very complex. Also, Lauren does things that are sometimes shameful, that are sometimes embarrassing, and that sometimes harm other people. So also Lauren herself is not an angel, she's not this perfect person that you can't relate to. And I think that you've gone out of your way to write these characters with a lot of complexity. And so I wanted to explore a little bit the idea of like characters just not being great, but still eliciting empathy out of people, and why you felt that it was so important to write these characters in the way that you did. Because I find the idea of bad people to be quite an intriguing one.
Yes. Yeah. There is that thing about villains, right? You look at anybody who is villainous. Nobody was born. Nobody was born, intending to do harm. I think everyone is born. I think every spirit comes into this world with gifts, and the whole reason why we're here is to express our gifts, to share them with our fellow humans, as we, sort of escort each other to the other side. It's like we're all on a walk. It's like I picture this big road we're all on. And we're all on this road, walking and talking and sharing this and sharing that. And at the end, at the beginning point of that walk is where we're born. At the end point is where we die. And so we're just, beside each other, walking each other home, essentially. That is why we are here. And but somewhere along the way, things happen. People get thwarted. And sometimes getting your desires thwarted, or getting your light sort of dimmed or in some way turned around, is what makes people into bad people. If no one was born bad. So I wanted that to reflect very much, so that so I wanted for every person who has harmed someone else in this book, as much as possible, for us to, even if it is just a glimpse, to see who they might possibly have been, that they possibly might have been someone else if this or that had not happened to derail their lives, or if this or that had not happened to knock them off that path that they were meant to be on, in order to be a fully fulfilled and happy and thriving and good human being. So I tried to make sure that complexity was in there. As much as, for example, Oto Olorin's mother, she is a really she's one of the worst mothers. I've had people just write feedback to me, or talk or tell people who have read the book and say, "Oh my God, that woman!" And she isn't, she isn't she's very much a fictional character, and she's very much not a fictional character. She's a compendium of many, many, many women that I have experienced or known, whose experiences I have known growing up in Nigeria, where they became the way they became because of what had been imposed upon themselves. So, and also Oto herself, in striving to become who she wants to be, she wants certain things. And, we all want things, to not want things is to be dead. We are our desires in many ways. And the whole reason in many ways, our striving towards life is also our striving towards our desires. By next year, I want this. I want to do this. I want to achieve this. So Oto very much wants to achieve many things. I mean, being the girl that she knows she is not the only thing that she wants to achieve in life. It is one of the major things because it is so fundamental. But she also wants to be a great artist. She wants to live her life. She wants to see places. She wants to experience things. But in all of this wanting, she's also coveting, because to want is also sometimes to covet what does not belong to you. And coveting what does not belong to you can lead to some really difficult situations and grim circumstances. But we're all human, and sometimes we do covet what is not ours. And so in this regard, and in some other ways, Otoloye also falls short of being a perfect human being, because that does not exist. There is no perfect human being. And so many other complex people who, in one way or the other, felt they failed themselves or they failed somebody else. And of course, there is the whole idea of wanting to atone for sometimes for shortcomings and for failures. And so, yes, I tried to really have everyone in this book be a complex character in order to show that, many people are made up of so much more, and we are all our stories. We are made up of the whole sum of our stories.
I like that so much, right? Because I think there's also a lot of complicity in the story. I feel like there was an opportunity for many of the parents in the very beginning of the book, especially the grandparents, to be on Oto's side, but they were just complacent in the violence, right? There's lots of violence in this book, and they just remain complacent. And I think in many instances, I want to also speak a little bit about redemption. I think that towards the end of the book, there is some redemption, whether it is because of age, but then there's also redemption at a point of death, right? You think about Oto's maternal grandmother, and you think about that woman only telling the truth because she was dying, right?
She's trashy.
And I wrestle with this idea of whether she was telling the truth because she was dying and she believed in some spiritual rhyme that she needed to release herself of this, or whether she really was saying, I need to unburden myself and unburden these people of this problem that I've caused. And I wanted to know about that tension, Buki.
Okay, wait, sorry, before you go there, because I just think you raised something so important before we speak about redemption. There's a conversation about complicity, and I think we think of complicity. I think that when we think of community, sometimes we forget our responsibility towards each other, right? And I think of Gwendolyn Brooks saying that we are each other's inheritance. And so when you speak about complicity, I am very interested in the ways in which Buki explores complicity in this book, because some of it is very overt, right? Some of it is, we can see parental neglect, we can see the ways in which also Lauren's father has not been who he needed to be, or the ways in which his mother has not been who she's needed to be. But then there's a complicity from the church, right? And the ways in which the church will promote the ill treatment of people who are different because they don't feel it fit the narrative, right? Or you think about the school participating in the cover-up of sexual abuse that's occurred, at the school. And so some of that is very overt, but some of that is also very covert. But in every single aspect that I'm speaking about, we have seen the complicity of the community. And so I want us to just touch on that because you've raised it before we move on to the redemption and what redemption looks like. Because can there be redemption without acknowledgement of harm and responsibility?
Ah, wow, I love this. So yeah, so there is so the whole so the idea of going, so we will come back to the idea of the grandmother and how and then how on complicity and so and her and what happens, with her death and so on. But yes, let's start with this with complicity. So yeah, I love that quote that you gave about our responsibility towards each other. And yes, there is a lot of complicity here. And that is always the thing. We look at all the sexual abuse, scandals coming up and all of these things being revealed now. And we, especially, for example, in the Catholic Church. And it's like all of these people have been there. There are people who have known all along and they've kept quiet. And silence, that particular brand of silence is so very, very powerful and so damaging. And it is, and in many ways, I think it's a lot of times it's because people feel, there are people who feel, oh, I could say something, I could do something, but I am just me, I'm just one person. I have so little power. If I start this, there's all this giant power arrayed against me. Who am I, little me, to go against this, big institution, this massive church? And yes, it is always a risk. And no, it doesn't always turn out right for the person who is trying to expose bad things that are going on. So, but that's the one of the questions that I sort of wanted to raise is, even if you are this little, even if you don't have that much power, it still makes a difference in your own capacity in any way that you can to try and speak truth to that power. So looking at the question of the church that is complicit, there is a lot of that, unfortunately, going on these days in many countries, and especially I can speak specifically to Nigeria, that there is a lot that this whole idea of children being witches, of child witchcraft, it is so hideous and so horrible. And there are so many churches that perpetuate that particular narrative. And there are so many children that are suffering as a result of that narrative being perpetuated. And that is something that I wanted very much for us to see and to understand. And I was hoping that people who have these sorts of ideas also will read this book, and that they would have identified so strongly with Oto Lori that when they see the things that are being done to her in the name of, the church being complicit in this particular type of abuse of children, they will be so shocked, and they will look around and question their own beliefs, because a lot of people in Nigeria still have these beliefs, still hold these particular beliefs. So I'm speaking specifically to Nigeria, but I know that this is widespread in many African countries and in many other parts of the world as well. So that was another thing that I wanted to explore, that whole that complicity from the church. And then the school, these things happen in schools. I mean, oh my goodness, the things that happen to people in schools and are covered up and are quieted. I remember a certain incident that happened when I was in university in Nigeria. And I will not, I went to well, I will not say in more detail because I don't want anyone to be in any way identified. But a young woman was raped, and she was so young. I mean, we just started university. We were barely out of our teens at the time, and she'd been to a party. She'd been dropped off, someone just put her in a taxi after they'd done whatever they wanted to do with her. They'd put her in a taxi with her clothes on and everything, and made the taxi bring her back to our dorms. And as soon as she walked in, it was clear what had happened to her, and she wasn't even sober. So everyone knew what happened. But did she get sympathy? Did she get kindness? No. Everyone, because in that culture, to be a woman who has been raped, it carries enormous stigma. So anyone who has been raped shuts their mouth. They do not ever say a word about it ever. So this young woman ended up, because everyone was whispering about her. Of course, no one would date her now. Oh, this has happened to her. She's untouchable. No one wants to touch her. No one wants to be with her. I remember her coming into the dining hall and just screaming and crying. I mean, this was the depth of her pain, screaming and crying. I was not raped. Nothing happened to me. This didn't happen to me. Stop spreading rumors about me. This didn't happen to me. And that is exactly the nature of the silence. Because no one was going to go after the people who raped her. Nobody was going to take her side. So the only thing she could do was now go and stand there in public denying that this ever happened to her. This is the nature of the silence. And the university would not have done, they might have maybe opened some sort of investigation, but she would always have been the one who suffered for this particular incident. So that is the sort of complicity around which I wrote this book, that sort of silence, that sort of continual silencing and complicity. And I wanted this book to sort of to be a challenge to all of that.
I like that so much, because I think that we don't understand the depths of complicity and culture and how religion plays a role in how we are complicit. But I think closely related with the idea of complicity is also the idea of redemption, right? There's a lot of redemption that happens in the book for a number of people. But my question really is it redemption because we are seeing the errors of our ways? Or is it because we believe in some higher power and we want to get into a heaven or wherever? And now we're at the point of death. So what we're doing is we're saying, I need to fix my life before I get to the other side, as the grandmother did in the story.
There is this whole thing about sometimes when people are dying. I actually read about that recently, and I wish again I could find that article. It is actually a medically recognized thing that sometimes happens to people, that when they are dying, there is this sifting through of the memory. So it's like when cards are put on top of each other, when that game where you stack some cards and then you touch them and then they all start falling. So it's in a way, when people are dying, their memories flash through. It is like this flashing through of the memory where then they just stop, because they are no longer in this present time. They are going back and forth in time, and so they're just talking. So sometimes it is that, and sometimes it is a need, like you said, to unburden, to just get things off your chest, knowing that I have done this harm, because suddenly there are no more consequences. And because there are no more consequences, because the dying person, in this case, the Otto Loring's grandmother, she's dying, and all of a sudden there are no consequences, and she might be able also to put things right. So in this case, it's almost a choose your own adventure situation. It's like, I want the reader to come into this, and so you can pick, whether you want it to be the grandmother finding some sort of redemption, or whether you want it to be the sort of just a scientific medical explanation for a dying person whose brain is now sort of filtering through all of her memories, and who is just talking, because she says a whole lot of things. And so and I try to play with that sort of ambiguity in the whole book. What is real? What is not real? What is scientific? What is imagined? So in that case, in that sense, the redemption of the grandma, is it redemption? Is it actual conscious redemption, or is this something that is just a scientific event, a scientifically explicable event happening inside, as the neurons are firing in her dying brain. So I play with this sort of complexity quite a bit in the whole book.
I want to speak about some happy things. Oh my goodness, this
happy
book.
Things.
No, because I think that when we think of coming of ages and we think about the things that Black children who don't fit the mold have to go through, we, the story can often just be reduced to trauma and to pain. But what I think you've done so beautifully is that there are nuggets of joy in this book. There are nuggets of tenderness. There are nuggets of love. And I want to talk about the tenderness because I don't want us to miss the opportunity to talk about the tender ways in which he writes about friendship and love and agreements in this book, And there is a tenderness in Otto, Lauren, and Darren's relationship. So it starts off as a friendship and it develops into a relationship as Otto, Lauren, and becomes to become. And I want to talk about the tenderness with which you approached this story, because they were both incredibly complex characters, but their relationship is so tender and is so beautiful. And I want to talk about that tenderness.
I love this. Can I just say this? Because obviously, this is my favorite relationship in the book. But I also think in thinking about tenderness and love and agreement, it's also like just this way there's a part earlier in the book, right, where we know Bayo sort of violates Otto, and Darren comes in, and then Darren speaks about this or confesses later on that I actually witnessed this ordeal and I saw, and I was okay with it. And I thought that was one of the most beautiful moments in the book, right, for someone to say, I've seen you for who you are, and people may think it is shameful, but I love you just the way that you are.
Yes. Yes. This Darren as a character is, I wanted to have someone do exactly that. Someone who has understood in some ways what it is to be different, even though there is difference, is not so much, it is a difference where, as opposed to Otto Loren's difference, where Otto Loren's difference is in some ways could be hidden. Darren's difference is right. It's right out there. Darren is of mixed race. Darren's mother is white, and Darren's father is Black, and so Darren's experiences, in some ways of standing out, and also just being the person that he is. Actually, and then Darren's own life experiences, even at such a young age, and the things that Darren has been exposed to, just make Darren such a more rounded and more open-minded character. So then when they meet and when their friendship begins to blossom, I wanted this to be about. That whole thing of, Black children's coming of age stories being filled with trauma. I really wanted there to be something to counter all of that, something good, something tender, something kind. And that is where this friendship comes in. And I wanted to make it a transcending sort of friendship, the sort of friendship that the sort of friendship that we get once in a lifetime, or maybe twice if we're lucky, that transcends everything. That friend who sees directly into your very heart of hearts, so that it's more of a meeting of souls, so that it does not even, what is on the outside becomes really completely irrelevant in many ways, because your souls are so aligned to one another. And so that's how that was how I was able to build in this tenderness and this love and this sense of agreement between them of, I see all of you, and I see all of you, including the you that you are hiding or that you think is hidden. Even if you've not shown explicitly and directly shown me that I know that I know that it's in there and that I see it. If all of this makes sense, because it's a bit convoluted, but that is exactly that sense of agreement, that understanding that does not need explanation often, that understanding that there are things that you are not telling me, but that you know that I sort of on a level understand exists, and I'm fine with it. And so when that incident happens with Bayo, when Bayo does that really terrible act, when Bayo actually does that violating act to Oto, and Derry actually is able to stand up and say, and of course there is, this is part of it, is that Oto is initially terrified because, everything that Oto has been told is, if anyone knows about you, if anyone sees you, if anyone, they're going to reject you, they're going to push you away, they're going to say what a monster you are. So when that happens, and Oto is terrified because, there is that whole thing of, okay, well, I'm going to lose Daring too now, but Daring is not just anybody. Daring is this person who is a soulmate friend to Oto. So Daring is able to just say, okay, whatever you need to be okay, I'm here for you. Whatever you need to be okay is what I will do. But it doesn't even matter what I think or what my own opinion is of what should happen here. But I will, because I'm here with you, whatever you need to be okay, however you want this to go, so that you, Otolorin, will be okay, is what I'm going to do. So that brings, that wonderful tenderness is what I try to make sure, really suffuses the entire book.
One of my favorite parts of the book, in all honesty, is when Laurie goes to her dad and is like, this is what you're going to do. Okay? You're going to give me money. You're going to sign this letter that says this. You're going to make that woman sign this letter that says this. I thought in many ways it was a sort of reclamation of power that she was robbed of throughout the book. And I really enjoyed that there was a moment or something where she was like, I'm going to use the power that I've created for myself. I've carved out this way. And this is what I'm going to demand from the world, because the world has been taking and taking and taking. And it's time that I demand from the world what I want from the world. And I wanted to know your reflection on particularly writing that scene, because we think she's 16 at the time, right? So she's not necessarily ultra emancipated from her parents, financially, emotionally, and all of that.
Yes. Oh, that is my favorite scene in the book. I'm so glad that you like that. It really is my favorite scene in the book, because I love so much how you put it, because it really is exactly that. Because there is, one thing, there are echoes from the beginning of the book. Laurie has wanted so much to confront this man who looms so large, who is so powerful, who has caused so much chaos and distress in their lives, and so for her to actually be able, and that was the growth that I wanted to show throughout the book, that she grows from being that person who is just terrified into this person who claims this power, who goes, I can go. And not only does she confront, her father, she confronts him on his own home, on his own turf, on her own terms. And so, for her to be able to do that, you had to see her grow into the person who could do that, even at this young age, because she's 16 going on 17. She's not yet emancipated, and that is part of what she's fighting for, that emancipation. that whole, exactly how you put it, that the world has been taking and taking and taking. They've stolen my voice, they've stolen my personhood, they've stolen all of this, and now I want to reclaim it back. This is who I am, this is what I want, and you will give it to me because you can, because you owe it to me. And so it is exactly that reclamation of power, that reclamation of voice, even because there is that whole idea of voice, and I do go into that quite a bit in the book, where being silenced, being left voiceless, and so it's that reclamation of her voice, of her power, and of really her entire being, because that is one scene in which it's almost like everything in the book was built. Well, yes, it was building towards, in many ways, this moment where she stands up and says, this is who I am, this is who I intend to be, and whether you like it or not, you are going to support this person, and this person is going to go out into the world and achieve everything that she has dreamed of achieving.
Sis. Okay, let me gather myself. I want to talk about sibling relationships, and it's so funny because earlier today I was talking to my brother, and my brother and I have quite a big gap, and so I don't have a sister, and it's always interesting to me to explore relationships between women. So the relationship between Lauren and her sister is particularly interesting for me. And they are complex, right? It's like they're complex, but at the root of it, there is such a deep love and respect and protection that they hold for each other. And I want to talk about writing that particular sibling relationship and what that meant, because that sibling relationship also demonstrates what redemption looks like, but also the power of forgiveness. I think there's a part in the book where there's been all of this conflict, and also has been trashy, and her sister's been trashy, everyone's been trashy. And she then says, what is love without forgiveness?
Oh, wow, yes. Yeah, this relationship. Yeah. Oh, go on. Yes.
Sorry, Alma brought it up earlier, but I think like the sibling relationship really encapsulate what Gwendolyn Brooks wrote, right? So Gwendolyn Brooks says that we are each other's harvest, we are each other's business, we are each other's magnitude and bond. And I felt like that was capsulated in the relationship. They were each other's harvests, right? And each other's business. I think there's a part in the book where Laurie says, like loving worry is healing, or this type of love is healing. And that stuck with me for such a long time.
Yes. Yes. These sibling bonds are some of the, they're the people who knew you way back when. You can't pull the wool over your siblings' eyes. They know, they knew you when. They knew, they know all your secrets. They know where all the bodies are buried, so to speak. So, they're the people who can interpret you. There's a sibling shorthand, that is sort of what I call it. There are some things that you never in this world have to explain to your sibling, because, you grew up in the same home. So there are some things your parents might say, or, you're at a family gathering and your parents say something, and you look at your sibling and neither of you have to say a word. You've both had a whole conversation just, by looking at each other, because, this is your background, this is your story. And siblings tend also, this is one thing, siblings tend to grow closer. I at least I've found, as they grow older, because then you rediscover each other again. And there is no one with whom you can reminisce about your childhood. There's no one else who was there. They were there. So this relationship between Otolori and Wura is one of such closeness, because they are also twins. And as we all know, the bond between twins is a different thing again. They're sort of a reflection of each other while being separate and different people. And sometimes between, that normal competitive relationship between siblings, you just have to look at, how children compete for resources in a family. Parents are always trying to make sure that, good parents will always try to make sure that one child does not feel, that they're being that there's favoritism, or that another child is more beloved, or that is getting more of the resources that are available to the family. So then when you put this into into a twin relationship, then it's like actually intensifying it. It's like it becomes even, because they were born on the same day. And it's hard sometimes for twins to differentiate themselves, from each other. A lot of twins resent that thing where people are, the twins, they're like, no, I'm me, no, he or she is themselves. So I wanted to show that complexity of that relationship between them, especially in a situation where one of the scarce resources that they are in competition for is the love of their parents, which is something that should not happen, in a situation where the parents are actually responsibly raising their children. So in this case, we are seeing that, their father does love Wura in his own very narrow and limited way. And of course, Mojisola, their mother, Wura is everything to her. And conversely, in the same way, Oto isn't anything to her parents. So then this adds another complex layer to their relationship. But this relationship is so close; they love each other so much that even despite all of these things coming between them, and the fact that also Wura gets to be who Oto wants to be. Oto just wants to live her life as Lori in the same way that Wura is living her life entirely as Wura, wear the dresses, go to the parties, enjoy everything, have the boyfriends, So, but in all of this, Wura gets to express all of these desires, all of these wants. But Oto is completely limited, and so is now pushed into a situation of deeply coveting, in many ways, what Wura has. And jealousy in sibling relationships can be so terribly destructive. And so, so then these are the things where, we talked earlier about the complexity of the characters, how nobody is entirely good 100% and nobody is 100% bad. And this is the situation in which we see, if we like, Oto's shadow self, Oto Lori's self that isn't the best aspect of herself, because because she covets all the things that Wura has, and this puts them in a situation where they both do not behave at their best, and where they both and where a young man comes into their lives, into both of them's lives, who then becomes a catalyst in many ways for them to try to come and drive between them that wedge that all of the other things that happened previously did not succeed in creating. So it is this particular situation that involves a young man that ends up being the situation that creates in which they show in which their worst selves emerge. And then when their worst selves have emerged, how do they find their way back to each other? How do they, despite having done things to each other that are so unforgivable almost, how do they come to a place of, you matter more to me than anything in this world? You're my business, you're everything, you're my harvest. How do I come back to you? How do we come back to each other?
I want to say thank you for writing the ending in the way that you did. I don't think my heart could have taken any other ending. Like, I would have literally wept if it didn't end the way that it did, because there was so much suffering and violence in this book that I was like, is there a break? do we as queer people, as trans people, as intersex people ever get a break and ever get a happy ending, right? Often a soft landing, because Otto throughout the book does not have many soft landings. And I think it would be remiss of us to end the podcast without talking about Mr. D. Mr. D, Mr. D.
Oh, Mr. D. One of the few men in the book who were not problematic, who were just soft and vulnerable. Oh, Mr. D,
And
I love you.
I have a question about whether Mr. D's own life experiences, and I'm going to say this, as his own queerness is the reason why he, in many ways, was like, I don't want a child to suffer the same fate as a lover of mine may have before. So I'm going to do everything in my power to know that this person knows that it's okay to be who they are and to exist in their fullness. I wanted to know that. I wanted to know, like, whether if Mr. D was not necessarily queer, whether it would have been different.
That is, oh, wow, yeah. But let me start from, do queer people ever get a soft landing, get a break? I wanted that so very much to happen in this book. And no, I'm like you. My heart could not have, even I writing it, my heart could not have taken any other ending. It just could not be any other way. It had to be happy. It had to be good. All of everything that Otto Loring experienced had to be, towards a becoming, towards a better ending, towards a better place, towards a joyful life, towards a freedom. And I wanted that to be what the book was about. That sometimes, in life doesn't hand you the best, life doesn't always hand us the best, the easiest cards. But of course, if you play it with, wholeheartedly and with your best, in the best possible way you can, whether, coming of age, even whether you're, coming of age in a country and you're gender queer in a country where it is really hard. Sometimes if you are able to look for your allies and, find your allies and believe in yourself and strive, you can be okay. You can be fine. You can have a great life. You can have it all. So I wanted very much for this book to end on that note. And so Mr. D, I love him so much. His own queerness, yes. He's Ghanaian. And we know what's been happening recently, keeping up with the news in Ghana and just how the oppression of queer people has become once again rampant in Ghana, and how just desperately sad that is, in that in this day and age, we cannot just seem to move past some such terrible behaviors, and just the hope that things are going to change, because people are not keeping quiet. People are fighting back, and this is so important. And so Mr. D is on, in a way, he's also a displaced person. And yes, and his queerness is what, in some ways, that what has displaced him and brought him in some ways to Nigeria. And of course, because of the time and the way the culture is, it's not overt. And he had his own experience, and when he was young, that caused him to be silenced, that traumatized him. And so his family happens in different ways, and he looks for his family. He's looking for the helpers. He's looking out for those young men, those young children, young people, I should say, who he knows possibly could be in the similar kind of situations and dangers that he faced. And he is quietly trying to be there to help them, to be a guardian, to guide them, to support them, in all the ways that he can, whether in his own, given his own limited power in a powerful country, in a country where he is teaching in a school where, where there are the children of the rich and the powerful, so there is that wonderful sweetness and kindness and tenderness in him. But he's also had to develop a certain toughness in order to survive. And he tries to inculcate that particular toughness that will help, the young people that he encounters, so that they too can survive, and not just survive so that they can thrive and be their whole selves. So there are all these beautiful, tender moments, all these loving, kind moments of finding family, of creating family, of, finding allies and helpers in the book as well. And yeah, Mr. D is such a marvelous character that I wish I had a Mr. D in my life. I think we all deserve a Mr. D in our lives.
I'm going to be a little naughty, right? And I'm going to... I'm always curious when I read people's acknowledgements, right? And I want to speak about this sweet French boy who stopped to help that exhausted Nigerian student at Harvard University, carrying her moving boxes to the dorm room many moons ago. Reader, I married him. Because I'm curious about that. I'm curious about, we speak a lot about displacement, and we also speak about foreignness when we think about Mr. D. And you coming from Nigeria and going to the UK, and that sort of move and what that did, and how love sort of cushioned you and gave you the space to just have soft landing.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Oh, yeah. So love, definitely. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Where do I unpack this?
I can even feel you blushing.
So beautiful to hear, right? It's so beautiful to hear because it comes from such a deep place as well. Love to hear it.
Thank you. Yes. So my husband, I met him in university in the UK, and we were both students at the time. And yes, I was moving. It was actually a bit of a stressful time in my life. I was moving from one dorm to another. And because I had to work in order to survive as a student, because my father was helping me a little, but I basically had to work basically I was working as a student. I was working during the holidays, during whether it was the Christmas holidays or the summer holidays. I was constantly working. So while being a student, I was working all the time. And so I just had a long, hard day at work, and I needed to move my boxes as well because I had to quit the dorm room that day. And it was all so stressful. And so it was later in the evening, I was rushing to grab these boxes and rushing to get back to my room and all of that. And the boxes were actually falling because I was so stressed. And this young man just said, "Can I help you carry them?" And I was like, "Oh, sure, thank you." And he carried them to my room. And, we're at the door. And I said, "Okay, you can leave them here." He said, No, I'll carry them all the way upstairs for you. Carried them upstairs. And then he just stood there and was chatting like we'd known each other forever. He just started talking. I was like, "Oh, okay." I was chatting with him. And then eventually I said, "Would you like a drink?" I offered him some juice. And then after that, he left. And then the next day, guess who showed up at my door? And then the next day. And so this was how our story began. And my husband is, he's French, he's white. And I'm Nigerian, I'm Black. So you can imagine that this was a French white boy in the UK, and this Nigerian Black girl and we met in the UK. And so our story is long and deep, and it's been many years. We've been married 20-something years, and we've moved. We moved around in the north of England, and then we moved to the US. And coming to the US was such a shock. I will not lie. America is such a different country again from anything that I'd ever experienced. And so I had to now start figuring out who I was over here and who I wanted to be. And so many things were challenged. Like when we first got here, I wasn't allowed to work. So I had to figure out, I had to go back to school because that was the only thing I could do. And so in all of this, he's been my constant, and we've been each other's constant. And I think in some ways, writing Daring was very much informed by, in some ways, by the man that he is to me.
Yes. And I felt it because Darren felt so like real, like I think writing about love in the way that you did come from a deep place. And so that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I just felt that you wrote it from this place that you know of. Ooh.
Yes. Yeah, he yes, very much in many ways, that constancy, that calmness in the face of things, that ability to just be there and say, okay, what reason out, where I would flail and panic and run around like, my hair was on fire. He would just go, okay, this, that, and that is the situation. Here you are. What shall we do? I am here. That always, and then he's smart. Oh, he's so smart. I mean, I fell in love with his mind as much as anything else. So, yeah, now you made me talk a whole lot about myself. But yes.
Buki, thank you so much. Thank you so much for.
This is such a beautiful note to end it on, right?
Yeah.
Oh, just the love. I'm like in love. I'm in love with love right now.
Thank you so much for the book. I wanted to know if it's possible to just read the first page of An Ordinary Wonder for anyone who's listening, just so that they can, enter the book.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I will be happy to. So I'm going to read from the preface. There's a slight preface at the beginning, and that preface is actually a Yoruba poem that is also a song. And then I'm going to read the first page. And the poem is, "Hey, child of the silver rivers, stay, offspring of the morning light, be well, daughter who dances to the beat of the waves." And in Yoruba, that song is, "Hey, ọmọ mi mọ́lẹ̀, dúró ọmọ olówùrọ̀, ọmọ pẹ̀lẹ́ o, ọmọ alùgbèjò." Proverb: a person who sells eggs should not start a fight in the market. My name is Otolorin. I've been called monster. Within dark valleys of flesh, I defy the given, a snake curled in upon itself, two in one, mythical and shunned. Yet in that magical place between worlds, in the realm where the great mother gives milk to her offspring, I become like a goddess. There in words unspoken, my voice is heard. I often wish I could take Wura, my sister, with me to visit that place where I truly come alive, but I cannot, because Wura is normal, so it would be death. Wura and I are twins. Like all other Yoruba twins that have ever been born, we should be called Taiwo and Kende, the one who came first and the one who lagged behind. Even in these, our natural names, our parents kept us apart. Otolorin, one who walks a different path, and Wuraola, a wealth of gold. Wura is everything to our mother, who will never have any other children because she is the woman who birthed the unspeakable. And my father has no desire to sire any more monsters. Here in Nigeria, the road ends at my secret. But America, they say, is the land where wonders are created and the wondrous is made ordinary. Now that I have wedged one foot onto that path, I am determined to make it all the way, because if I do, perhaps I too can become an ordinary wonder.
Thank you. You're far too kind.
Buki, this is so amazing. I think we just really want to thank you for your generosity, and thank you for having just been so kind and so open, not only in this podcast, but in writing this book. And there are just no words for, I think, what this book has done. I did say that this has been one of my favorite books of the year, and I completely understand why it is an Evening Standard best debut for 2021. So congratulations on the amazing work that you've done, and thank you. And we just want to give you your flowers, and we really look forward to so much more coming out of you.
Oh, yes, thank you so much.
I echo Alma's sentiments. I think that An Ordinary Wonder is just like, wow, man. Wow. I think I will return to it just to think about the love and just the tenderness that we owe to ourselves and the tenderness that we can create in the world. So thank you really much, Buki, for writing such a unputtable down book. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an utter joy and a pleasure to talk with you both. This has been really just one of the most amazing experiences that I have had since my book was published. You have been amazing and generous, and your love for my book has been so evident, and you are wonderful people. And I very much love the way that you have understood An Ordinary Wonder. And yeah, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Cheekinators, thank you so much for joining us once again on this episode. If you would like An Ordinary Wonder, please pop us an email at info@cheekinatives.co.za, or you can also visit our website, www.cheekinatives.co.za /shop. And yes, until next time.